Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that. We do have affordable options if you seek them out. If you're going to go to the ticket window, that's where our highest price point is. So if you can put it into kind of relatable terms, one of the things that we can say is, if you're going to book an airline ticket, you don't book it on the day that you're going to fly. Or we're conditioned to, book a hotel in advance, knowing that we're going to get a better price than if we walk in off the street and book a hotel room on that night. So for us, we operate in a pre-commitment model, which is focused on making sure that we deliver those discounts to people that commit to us early. So if you're the casual skier, like the gentleman talked about at that point in time, we do have products where you can, if you're going to ski 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, you can come and buy a pass. And you can buy it in advance and prior to the deadline, and you will get a discount of up to 50% off what the ticket window price would be.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at that weekend storm that rolled through it really started on the Friday, and we received that amount of precipitation, unprecedented storm for us here in Whistler. With the amount of precip and snow that went along with it, I think it was about 166 millimeters of rain in Squamish. We recorded winds sustained over 189 kilometers an hour here. It actually de-roped the peak chair, bare rope, off of 3 towers that day, and plastered the ski area with ice. And so the de-icing of all of our infrastructure took days. It went right through the entire weekend, through the evenings and through the day, and it definitely led to impacts to all of our guests. But it was definitely an unprecedented storm, and we tend to, even during those storms, we know they're coming. We spend a lot of time pre-planning to prevent as many impacts as possible. We ran the lifts through the night. We couldn't run our lifts when it had chairlifts on them because they're so windy. So you can imagine it. You have to be able to actually have visual on those lifts when it's that windy. But we run the gondolas bare rope to take the cabins off and run the rope all night during those storms, so we see coming, to prevent icing. But certain lifts with those conditions, you just can't run them. And so they're exposed to the elements, and they were heavily impacted. Every day we get here, we're going to open up 100% of the terrain we safely can every single day. So it starts out in the early season in a much smaller footprint, and sometimes it's just on man-made snow, and then we grow the terrain, and it gets bigger, and we can expand into the terrain. And if you go back historically, we tend to be moving into our high alpine areas the first week of December, and we plan for it operationally. We plan to move into our high alpine around that time. This year, we didn't get into the high alpine until January 16th on the peak chair. A little bit earlier on Blackcomb, which is unprecedented for us. So before Christmas, we really want to have enough terrain to handle the crowds. That's driving us. Every single day, we're trying to get into as much terrain possible for our guests, because the impact to our guests is significant if we're limited. So that's our drive. However, we're kind of constrained around safety. And if it's not reasonable or safe to bring people into the terrain, we make decisions not to go there. And there's no reason, other than a safety concern, that we wouldn't go into a high alpine terrain, whether it's Seventh Heaven, Harmony, Symphony, the peak chair. It's usually driven by safety concerns, whether it's snowpack, or there's not enough snow, or there's too much snow, or all of those considerations are what formulates our decision making. But really, there's no constraints on myself or any of our team to go and work into this area, and we want to open as much as we can. That's our intent. Every single morning we wake up, we're going to open up everything we have. Now, if it's too windy and we can't run in the peak chair, you may not feel it at the restaurant elevation. But in January we had, I believe, 28 days of avalanche control we took place that. I think there was, like how many days of sustained wind that we ran in January in our alpine. There was, most of the month was sustained at over 80-kilometer winds in our alpine area. Very, very impactful.
I guess my response to that is we've actually increased staffing levels over the last couple of years and are more resourced than we ever have been to deal with opening our mountain in a timely and safe fashion. Lift times have not changed year in, year out. We aspire to open all of our lifts as early as we can in the season, beginning in December, and as early as we can in the day, and that has not changed. So if there's a delay in lift opening time, it has to do with weather and operating conditions. It's been a unique year. So it started with low snowpack in December, and that lays down our base layers of snow to get us prepped for the winter. And some years we have a good snowpack at the beginning of the season that supports a sort of normal opening for our mountains here, and this year we did not. So we had a little bit of snow that sat for a long time exposed to the elements, and that created a weak layer down low in the snowpack. And then all of a sudden, we received a lot of snow. As Doug was just saying, January was a huge snowy month, and we were unable to mitigate the hazard with normal explosives use to a point where we felt comfortable opening the alpine terrain. And that was because we weren't comfortable going there for our own safety, and we certainly weren't comfortable opening the terrain for our guests until that layer was mitigated. So we threw a lot of explosives at that. It's been 5 tons of explosives have been thrown on the mountains this year, which is about 60% more than normal. A lot of helicopter time. We had some concerns traveling in the alpine terrain on foot and on skis for our own safety. So we used a helicopter a lot more than normal to get into those start zones. And we were seeing large avalanches, and we were surprised by some of the results we were seeing. And so we didn't have the confidence to get that terrain open for our public in a safe fashion.
I mean, I'm assuming it's kind of lower whiskey jack that it's being referred to. I have to know the day and go back and look at it. But generally, we're looking to groom anywhere from 1,200 to 1,600 acres of grooming a night across both ski areas, and a lot of sections of runs are skipped over. They're done alternately every other night. So it might have been a rotation, and it might have been on that particularly post-rain event at that elevation, and it was going to be done that night. It was on a rotation process. You have to kind of look at it, but we wouldn't leave it for days on end. It would be done that night and for the next day. However, there's so many trails here at Whistler, it's so big. Grooming 1,600 acres, it's still a lot of acres still yet to groom. So we're on this rotation, and that's what we're set out every night to do. And when we get into these significant storm challenges, we may be digging out the top of Harmony, which may take one person 6-7 hours to dig out the top terminal, put in the ridge on Harmony Ridge, and we're not getting to every run on the mid-mountain, but we know we want to go to Harmony tomorrow. So we're moving our resources around as best we can. I think one stands out is the Blackcomb gondola going into Christmas holidays. It was a heck of a Christmas present for everybody, is to have that fault show up on Christmas Eve. And it's just super unfortunate that happened. And we had every expert in the world, including Doppelmayr, involved in finding the solution to have that operational as fast as we can, because it is a significant impact. Very unfortunate. That one probably stands out the most. We've had numerous weather impacts to us, whether it's storms that affect the creekside or mid-mountain on Blackcomb on Accelerator. We've had some unusual storms, some really, really cold, snowy storms that impacted mid-mountain. When I think back to what's preventable within our lifts, what could we have done? There's not a long list of preventable incidents within our lift systems that we feel like we could have prevented through preventative maintenance. They're just, whether it's an electrical fault like the Blackcomb gondola is a very specific incident that took place. However, it's a brand new lift, and we could never have anticipated that that little fault would have created such a problem. And it took a fair bit of chasing to find that. So, I mean, we do look at it, we track every single day. I look at how many stops on every single lift, the duration of those stops. Is it a ramp issue? Is it, what are the issues at large that's causing these issues with any particular lift? We look at that on a daily basis, and we actually track the performance of all of these lifts regularly. So it's top of mind for our team. And lift reliability is probably one of the more influential impacts to our guest experience. If you can't rely on the lifts, it's got a huge impact to our guests. So, it's very serious for us. We want to keep an eye on it.
I mean, look, we're always looking to improve the things that we do. I mean, if we're not looking to improve, then we're not doing our jobs. And one of the things that we are looking at improving is how we communicate in the on-mount space, or what we call operational communications. So we're taking a deep dive and a look at what we do well and what we don't do well. And the things that we've already started, like the light boards, are an example. Twitter is a useful tool for us because we can actually get that information out in real time as quickly as possible. So we have various avenues that we need to look at to communicate. There are a lot of channels that we can communicate on, and we're looking at exploring all of those things to just try to improve what we're doing. To suggest that we are running operations from a centralized office, we couldn't do it even if we tried. I mean, it takes having boots on the ground, understanding how the terrain reacts, getting a feel for the resort. We haven't changed. We haven't changed the way we've operated the mountain. And in fact, the teams that currently operate the mountain long predate the Vail acquisition. I'll give you an example of our forecasters. Our forecasters have a cumulative average of 70 years work experience in these mountains. So we're making these decisions locally. And it's hard to combat that perception, of course, because it's easy to look at Vail and the corporate culture and surmise that that's the way it's run. But I can tell you clearly that the decisions are made over here. And the way we run the mountain hasn't changed. For the folks that have signed the petition, that's their experience, and we certainly don't want to diminish that. We are listening. Some of the stuff we're already across. A lot of the stuff we recognize we need to improve on some of those areas. But people here are passionate, right? They feel ownership of this place. That's what makes this place great, is that people care about it, right? And we care about it. And we care the way that they feel about how we're doing our job, right? We always want to do the best. They're challenging us to be our best. And we're committed to making sure that we are improving and constantly trying to innovate and constantly trying to push forward.